The rain came down hard that evening, the kind that doesn't just fall but slams into the pavement like it's angry at the world. Puddles formed fast in the potholes along the shoulder of Route 34, just outside the city limits, and the streetlights flickered under the weight of the storm. Cars splashed through the flooded lanes, their headlights cutting weak yellow cones through the gray curtain of rain. Most drivers were in a hurry to get home, eyes glued to the road, minds already in their dry living rooms with a hot cup of something in hand. Maya wasn't in a car. She was walking. Her sneakers were soaked through, her thin jacket doing little against the wind that whipped sideways rain into her face. She'd just finished her second shift at Lou's Diner, 8 hours on her feet after already working a morning shift at the laundromat. Her feet ached, her back felt like someone had tied a knot in it, and all she wanted was to collapse onto the lumpy couch in her grandmother's apartment and maybe, just maybe, get 3 hours of sleep before the alarm went off again. She kept her head down, hands shoved deep in her pockets, counting the blocks in her head. 4 more to go, just 4. She passed a gas station, its neon sign buzzing like an angry hornet, then a closed auto shop with chains on the gate. The world felt quiet except for the drumming rain and the occasional whoosh of a car speeding past. Then suddenly, it wasn't quiet anymore. A sharp screech tore through the air, followed by a sickening crunch of metal. Maya froze. Her heart jumped into her throat. About 50 yards ahead, a black SUV had swerved off the road, skidded across the wet grass, and slammed into a telephone pole. Steam, or maybe smoke, curled from the crumpled hood. For a second, everything was still. Then flames flickered near the front tire, small at first, then growing fast, licking hungrily at the plastic and rubber. Maya didn't think. She ran. Her legs burned, her lungs tight from the cold air and exhaustion, but she didn't slow down. As she got closer, she saw it. A child's face pressed against the back window, pale, terrified, eyes wide with panic. The boy couldn't have been more than 5 or 6, strapped into a car seat, pounding his small fists against the glass. "Help!" he screamed, his voice muffled but clear enough to slice through the rain. The fire was spreading now, climbing up the front wheel well, creeping toward the gas tank. Maya knew cars. She'd grown up fixing old clunkers with her uncle before he passed. And she knew that once the flames hit the tank, there wouldn't be anything left but twisted metal and smoke. She reached the SUV, coughing as black smoke stung her eyes. The driver's side door was jammed shut, bent inward from the impact. The back doors were locked. She yanked at the handle, but it didn't budge. The child was crying now, great heaving sobs, his face streaked with tears. "Hey! Hey, look at me!" Maya shouted, pressing her hands against the window. "I'm gonna get you out, okay? Just stay calm." He nodded, sniffling, eyes locked on hers like she was the only thing keeping him from floating away. She scanned the ground, frantic. There, a chunk of broken concrete near the ditch. She grabbed it, heavy and rough in her hands. Without hesitation, she swung it at the rear passenger window. Once, twice. On the third hit, the glass shattered inward with a sharp crack. Smoke poured out, thick and acrid. Maya covered her mouth with her sleeve and leaned in. "Unbuckle your seatbelt," she yelled over the growing roar of the fire. The boy fumbled with the latch, fingers shaking. "I can't." "It's okay, I'll do it." She reached through the broken window, careful of the jagged edges, and found the buckle. It clicked open. She grabbed him under his arms and pulled him toward her. He was light but awkward, and for a terrifying second his foot got caught on the seat. She tugged harder, her muscles screaming. And finally he came free. She stumbled backward, clutching him to her chest as the flames leaped higher, now engulfing the front half of the SUV. The heat hit her like a wall. She turned and ran, just as a deep, thunderous boom shook the ground behind them. The gas tank had exploded. The force knocked them both off their feet. Maya twisted in midair, shielding the boy with her body as they landed hard in the muddy grass. Debris rained down around them, bits of plastic, metal, glass, but nothing hit them. She lay there for a second, ears ringing, heart hammering, rain washing the soot from her face. Then she sat up, still holding the boy. "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" He shook his head, trembling, but his eyes were clear. "You saved me," he whispered. Maya let out a shaky breath. Yeah, I guess I did." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Red and blue lights flashed through the trees. Help was coming. She stood, pulling the boy up with her. He clung to her jacket, his small fingers gripping the damp fabric like it was a lifeline. She brushed a strand of wet hair from his forehead. "What's your name?" "Leo," he said softly. Leo, she repeated. Good name. She looked back at the burning wreck. The SUV was now a skeleton of flame and smoke, the fire department's hoses already dousing it from a safe distance. Police cars blocked the road, lights spinning. Paramedics rushed toward them with blankets and oxygen. One of the EMTs knelt beside them. You both okay? Any injuries? Maya shook her head. Just some smoke. He's fine, just scared. They wrapped Leo in a silver thermal blanket and checked his vitals. He didn't cry. He just kept looking at Maya, like he was making sure she was still there. Then, something strange happened. Above the wail of sirens and the hiss of rain on hot metal, a new sound cut through, the rhythmic thump-thump-thump of helicopter blades. Everyone looked up. Through the storm clouds, a sleek black chopper descended, its searchlight sweeping the scene before landing in a nearby field. Kicking up mud and grass, a man jumped out before the blades even slowed. He was tall, dressed in a dark overcoat that probably cost more than Maya made in a year. His hair was slicked back, his face pale under the emergency lights. But it wasn't his clothes or his expensive shoes that caught Maya's attention. It was his eyes, wide, wild with fear. And then relief, he ran straight to Leo. Leo! His voice cracked. He dropped to his knees in the mud, ignoring everything else, and pulled the boy into his arms so tightly Maya thought he might never let go. Leo buried his face in the man's shoulder, finally letting out a sob. The man looked up then, his gaze locking onto Maya. His eyes were red-rimmed, his hands still trembling. You got him out? Maya nodded, suddenly self-conscious in her soaked diner uniform, her hair a mess, her hands scraped and smudged with soot. Yeah, just in time. He stood slowly, still holding Leo, and took a step toward her. I don't know your name, he said, voice low and rough, but I owe you everything. Maya shrugged, looking down at her shoes. Anyone would have done it. But the way he looked at her, like she'd pulled the moon from the sky, told her he didn't believe that. And maybe in that moment neither did she. The paramedics gently guided Leo toward the ambulance, but the man didn't let go of Maya's eyes. What's your name? He asked again. Maya, she said. Maya, he repeated, as if memorizing it. Thank you. She didn't know who he was. Didn't recognize the helicopter, the tailored coat, the quiet authority that seemed to make even the police officers step aside for him. All she knew was that a little boy was alive because she'd kept walking instead of stopping to rest. As they loaded Leo into the ambulance, the man turned back once more. We'll find you, he said simply. Then he climbed in beside his son, and the doors closed. The ambulance pulled away, lights flashing, siren fading into the storm. Maya stood there in the rain alone again, the adrenaline draining out of her like water through a cracked cup. Her hands stung. Her knees felt weak. She realized she was shaking, not from cold but from the sheer weight of what had just happened. A police officer approached, clipboard in hand. Miss, we need your statement. She nodded, numb, and followed him to a patrol car. As she gave her name, address, and a shaky account of the rescue, her mind kept drifting back to Leo's face. The fear, then the trust, then the quiet awe when he said, You saved me. By the time she finished, the fire was out. The SUV was a blackened shell. The road was quiet again, except for the steady drum of rain. She walked the rest of the way home in silence. Her grandmother was waiting up, wrapped in a shawl, worry etched into every line of her face. Maya, where have you been? I heard about an accident on Route 34. I'm okay, Abuela, Maya said, hugging her tightly. I'm fine. She didn't tell her everything. Not yet. She didn't want to scare her. She just changed into dry clothes, washed the soot from her hands, and lay down on the couch staring at the ceiling. Sleep didn't come easy. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the flames, felt the heat, heard Leo's voice, and then faintly, the sound of helicopter blades fading into the night. She didn't know it then, but her life had just split in two, the before and the after. The before was laundry shifts, overdue bills and dreams put on hold. The after, well, the after hadn't started yet, but it was coming, fast, and it would change everything. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and stale coffee. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a pale glow on the linoleum floors. Maya sat in a hard plastic chair outside the pediatric observation room, her hands still raw from the rescue, her clothes stiff with dried mud and soot. She'd refused to leave until she knew the boy, Leo, was okay. The police had taken her statement twice and a nurse had checked her over, but she wasn't hurt, just exhausted. Still, something kept her there, like an invisible thread tied between her and that little boy. Inside the room, through the glass window, she could see him. He was sitting up in bed, wrapped in a hospital gown, sipping apple juice from a paper cup. A doctor stood nearby, talking quietly. Leo nodded now and then, his eyes calm, though every few seconds he'd glance toward the door, as if expecting someone. Then the elevator down the hall dinged. Maya didn't look up at first. She figured it was another nurse or maybe a social worker. But the footsteps that followed were different, slow, deliberate, heavy with purpose. When she finally turned, she saw him, the man from the helicopter. He looked different now. The panic was gone from his face, replaced by something quieter, deeper, like grief mixed with awe. His coat was gone, replaced by a dark sweater and slacks, but he still carried himself like someone used to being in charge. Yet his hands were shoved in his pockets, his shoulders slightly hunched as if trying to make himself smaller. He stopped a few feet away from her. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then he said, "You stayed." Maya nodded. "Had to make sure he was all right." "He is," the man said softly. "Thanks to you." He took a step closer, his eyes searching her face, not with suspicion, but with something like wonder. "I keep replaying it in my head. If you hadn't been walking by, if you'd been 5 minutes later." His voice trailed off. He swallowed hard. "I don't even want to think about it." Maya looked down at her hands. "I didn't do anything special, I just saw a kid in trouble." "That's the thing," he said, his voice low. "Most people wouldn't have stopped. Most would have called 911 and waited, but you ran toward it. Into the fire." She didn't know what to say to that, so she just shrugged. He studied her for a moment longer, then gestured toward the chair beside her. "Do you mind if I sit?" She shook her head. He lowered himself carefully, like sitting was something he had to think about. "My name is Elias," he said after a pause. "Leo's father." "Maya," she replied, though he already knew. "I know," he said with a small, tired smile. "You told the police." Silence settled between them again, but it wasn't awkward. It felt heavy, like two people standing on opposite sides of a deep river, both knowing they'd just crossed something huge together, even if they didn't understand it yet. Inside the room, Leo looked up and saw his father. His face lit up. He waved. Elias stood immediately, his expression softening in a way Maya hadn't expected. He went to the door, opened it gently, and stepped inside. Maya watched through the glass as Leo threw his arms around him, burying his face in his father's chest. Elias held him tightly, his eyes closing for a second, like he was memorizing the feel of his son breathing. Then Leo pointed toward the window. Elias turned and looked at Maya. He said something to Leo, who nodded eagerly. Elias came back out, closing the door behind him. "He wants to see you," he said. Maya hesitated. "Is that okay?" "More than okay," Elias said. "He hasn't stopped talking about you since he woke up." She stood, brushing invisible dust off her jeans, and followed him into the room. Leo's eyes widened when she entered. "You came back." "Of course I did," Maya said, smiling despite herself. He patted the edge of the bed. "Sit." She sat, careful not to bump his IV line. Up close, she could see the faint bruise on his temple from the crash, but otherwise he seemed fine. Just a little pale, a little tired. "You saved me from the fire," he said matter-of-factly, like he was stating a fact as simple as the sky being blue. "I guess I did," Maya said. "Dad says you're a hero." Maya glanced at Elias, who gave her a small, helpless shrug as if to say, "What do you want me to do?" "He's 5. I'm not a hero," she said gently. "I just helped." "But you ran into the fire," Leo insisted. "Heroes do that," she didn't argue. What could she say to a kid who'd just survived something like that? Elias watched them quietly from the corner, arms crossed, but his expression had changed. The hard edges of his face seemed softer now, like the fear had sandpapered away some of his usual sharpness. After a few minutes, a nurse came in to check Leo's vitals. Elias stepped aside and Maya stood to leave. "Wait," Leo said, grabbing her hand. "Don't go yet, I'll come back," she promised. "But you need to rest." He let go reluctantly. As she walked out, Elias followed her into the hallway. "Can I ask you something?" He said, "Sure. Why didn't you take the reward?" Maya frowned. "What reward?" "The police said you refused any compensation. They offered you a city commendation, a cash gift from the fire department. You said no to all of it." "Oh," she said, surprised. "I didn't even think about it. I didn't do it for money." "I know," he said quickly. "That's why it matters." They stood there for a moment, the hospital sounds humming around them. Beeping machines, distant voices, the squeak of shoes on tile. "Look," Elias said, shifting his weight. "I know you probably don't want anything from me, and I respect that, but is there something I can do? Anything, your family. Your job, please. Let me help." Maya hesitated. She thought about her grandmother's mounting medical bills, the eviction notice they'd gotten last week, the way Abuela hid her pain behind smiles so Maya wouldn't worry. But pride flared in her chest. "I don't need charity," she said quietly. "This isn't charity," he said. "It's gratitude." She looked at him, really looked. And for the first time she saw not just a rich man in expensive clothes, but a father who'd almost lost his child. A man who was still shaking inside even if his hands were steady. "I'll think about it," she said finally. He nodded, like that was enough. They exchanged numbers, just in case Leo wanted to talk, he said. She gave him the diner's landline, not her cell. She didn't trust it yet. The next morning, Maya went back to work like nothing had happened. But everything had. At the diner, Lou pulled her aside before her shift. "You're all over the news, kid." "What?" He handed her a tablet. The headline read, "Local woman pulls child from burning SUV. Billionaire father grateful." Her stomach dropped. There was a blurry photo of her carrying Leo away from the flames. Her face half-turned, hair wild, eyes wide with fear and focus. "Oh no," she whispered. By lunchtime, reporters were camped outside the diner. Customers pointed at her, whispering. Some asked for autographs. Others just stared. She kept her head down, refilled coffee, wiped tables, tried to pretend she was invisible. But she wasn't. That evening, as she walked home, a woman stopped her on the street. "Are you the girl from the news? The one who saved that little boy?" Maya nodded, uncomfortable. The woman pressed a $20 bill into her hand. "For your bravery." Maya tried to give it back, but the woman was already walking away. At home, Abuela was watching the local news. There was footage of the burning SUV, the helicopter landing, even a short clip of Elias being interviewed outside the hospital. "He's the thorn," Abuela said, eyes wide. "The tech man. Owns half the apps on your phone." Maya hadn't known. She didn't follow business news. She just saw a scared dad. The next day, something stranger happened. A man in a suit showed up at the diner. Not a reporter, but someone official-looking. He asked to speak with Maya privately. When she came out back, he handed her an envelope. "From Mr. Thorne," he said. "He asked me to deliver this personally." Inside was a check. For $10,000, Maya's hands shook. "I can't take this." The man didn't argue. "He said you'd say that." He also said, "This isn't a gift. It's a loan. If you ever want to pay it back, you can. But if not, consider it an investment in you." She stared at the check. Torn that night, she called the number Elias had given her. He answered on the first ring. "I got your check," she said. "I figured you would. I can't accept it." "Why not?" "Because it feels wrong, like I'm being paid for doing the right thing." There was a long pause. Then he said, "What if I told you it's not for you? What if it's for your grandmother?" Maya froze. "How do you know about her?" "I asked around quietly. I know she's sick. I know the bills are piling up. I know you work 2 jobs just to keep a roof over your heads." She felt a lump in her throat. "That's not your problem." "But it is now," he said gently. "Because if you hadn't been there that night, I'd be planning my son's funeral, instead of watching him build Lego towers in his hospital bed. So let me do this, not as a billionaire, just as a father who owes you more than money can ever repay." She didn't answer right away. Finally, she whispered, "Okay. But only for her. Not for me." "Fair enough," he said. The next morning, before she even got to the diner, a car pulled up outside her apartment. 2 people in medical scrubs stepped out with a wheelchair. They introduced themselves as nurses from St. Mary's Private Care. "Mr. Thorne arranged for your grandmother to be transferred," one of them said kindly. Full coverage. Private room. No cost to you. Abuela was confused at first, then tearful. Maya, what did you do? I didn't do anything, Maya said, helping her into the wheelchair. Someone just decided to be kind. At the hospital, Abuela was settled into a quiet room with sunlight, soft sheets, and a nurse who checked on her every hour. Maya visited after her shifts, bringing homemade soup and reading her old telenovelas on her phone. One evening, as she sat by the window, Elias texted her. Leo asked about you today. He drew you a picture. Want to see it? She hesitated, then typed, sure. A photo came through. A crayon drawing of a girl with long hair, standing in front of a burning car holding a small boy. Above them, in wobbly letters, my hero. Maya's eyes filled with tears. She didn't reply right away. But later that night she sent a message of her own. Tell him thank you. And tell him, I'm glad he's okay. Elias wrote back instantly. So am I. More than you know. Days passed. The news coverage died down. Reporters stopped showing up. Life almost returned to normal, except it didn't, not really. Because now, Maya carried a secret weight. The knowledge that one choice, running toward danger instead of away, had changed not just Leo's life, but hers too. And somewhere across the city, in a penthouse high above the streets, a man who'd spent his life building empires was learning, for the first time, how to be human. He didn't call her again, didn't show up with more money or grand gestures. He just made sure her grandmother was cared for, made sure the bills disappeared, made sure Leo knew her name. And Maya, proud and cautious, began to wonder if kindness didn't always have to come with strings. Maybe sometimes it just came with a quiet promise. I see you. And I won't forget. Life settled into a strange new rhythm after the rescue. The news vans disappeared, the strangers stopped handing her money on the street, and the diner regulars stopped whispering when she walked by. But things weren't the same, not really. Maya still worked double shifts. Still counted every dollar, still woke up with her back aching and her eyes heavy. But now there was a quiet hum beneath it all, like a song playing just out of earshot. Her grandmother was in the private hospital room getting better every day. The nurses treated her like royalty, checking her blood pressure twice a day, bringing her warm blankets, even fixing her hair in the mornings. Maya didn't ask how it was paid for. She already knew. And though part of her wanted to refuse it, another part, the part that remembered Abuela crying in the kitchen over a stack of bills she couldn't pay, was too grateful to say no. Still, she kept her distance from the man who'd made it happen. She didn't call. She didn't text unless he reached out first, which he did only once a week, always about Leo. A photo of him eating ice cream, a video of him laughing at a cartoon, never about money, never about favors, just updates, like he was slowly stitching a thread between their worlds. One quiet message at a time. Then, one afternoon, a thick envelope arrived at the diner. Maya almost threw it away. Junk mail, she thought. But the return address was from City College, and her name was typed neatly on the front. Her heart jumped. She'd applied months ago, before the accident, before everything changed. She'd wanted to be a nurse since she was 12, when she stayed up all night holding Abuela's hand during a bad fever. But the tuition was impossible. She'd sent the application more out of hope than belief. Now she tore it open with trembling fingers. Inside was an acceptance letter. She read it once, then again. Then a third time, just to be sure. She'd been accepted into the nursing program. Full admission, starting next semester, but that wasn't all. Tucked behind the letter was a separate sheet, official-looking with a university seal. It explained that she'd been awarded the Leo Thorne Community Service Scholarship, a full-ride award covering tuition, books, and even a small living stipend. The note at the bottom read, awarded to individuals who demonstrate extraordinary courage, compassion, and commitment to others. Maya sat down hard on the diner's back step, the envelope clutched to her chest. Her eyes burned. She hadn't applied for any scholarship. She hadn't even known this one existed. But she knew who'd created it. She didn't call right away. She needed to think. This wasn't just money, it was a future, a real chance. But it came from him, and that made it complicated. That night she visited Abuela. The old woman was sitting up in bed, knitting something lopsided and bright blue. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Abuela said, peering over her glasses. Maya handed her the letter. Abuela read it slowly, her lips moving with each word. When she finished, she looked up, tears in her eyes. "Mija, this is your dream." "I know," Maya whispered. "But it's from him, so?" Abuela set down her knitting. "You think kindness has to come from someone poor to be real? God works through all kinds of hands, even rich ones." "It feels like I'm being bought," Maya said, voice tight. "Did he ask for anything in return?" "No." "Then it's not buying. It's giving." Maya looked out the window. Rain tapped softly against the glass. I don't want to owe him." "You already saved his son," Abuela said gently. "What more could he possibly want?" The word settled in Maya's chest like a stone sinking into calm water. A few days later, she went to the college campus for orientation. She wore her best jeans and a clean sweater, her hair pulled back neatly. The other students chatted in groups, laughing, comparing high school stories. Maya stood alone, feeling like an imposter. She was older than most of them. She'd never been on a school trip or had a tutor. She'd worked since she was 14, but when she walked into the nursing lab, saw the mannequins, the IV kits, the posters of human anatomy, something inside her clicked into place. This was where she belonged. Still, the scholarship weighed on her. She kept waiting for the catch, for a call saying, "Just kidding, you have to work for us now." But nothing came. Meanwhile, Leo was healing, not just his body, but his mind. Elias sent another message one evening. He had his first nightmare last night. Woke up screaming about fire, but when I told him you were safe, he calmed down. He said Maya wouldn't let the fire win. Maya read that message over and over. She didn't know what to say. So she just replied, "Tell him I'm always on his side." Then came the day she couldn't ignore anymore. She was walking home from class. Yes, she'd started attending early sessions and passed a community center near her old neighborhood. The building was run down, paint peeling, windows cracked. A sign out front read, "Free clinic, hours vary, supplies limited." She'd walked by it 100 times. But now, with nursing textbooks in her bag, she stopped. Inside, a single nurse was seeing patients in a room that smelled of mildew and antiseptic. A line of people waited on folding chairs, elderly men with coughs, mothers with feverish toddlers, a young man with a deep cut on his arm wrapped in a dirty towel. Maya watched for a long time. Then she went in. "Can I help?" she asked the nurse. The woman looked exhausted. "You a student?" "First year nursing," Maya said. "I know I'm not certified yet, but I can take vitals, organize charts, clean supplies." The nurse studied her, then nodded. "God bless you. We're drowning here." For the next few weeks, Maya volunteered after class. She took blood pressure, labeled samples, held the hands of scared kids getting shots. She saw things that made her stomach turn. Infected wounds untreated for weeks. Diabetics rationing insulin. Parents choosing between medicine and rent. And it hit her. This was why she wanted to be a nurse. Not for the title. Not for the paycheck. But for this. For the chance to stand in the gap when no one else would. One evening, as she was wiping down exam tables, her phone buzzed. It was Elias. "Can we talk?" "In person?" Her stomach tightened. She hadn't seen him since the hospital. "Where?" She texted back. "The park near your apartment." "Tomorrow afternoon. Leo wants to see you." She almost said no, but then she thought of Leo's drawing. Of his voice saying, Maya wouldn't let the fire win. "Okay," she replied. The next day she arrived early. The park was quiet, leaves turning gold in the late fall sun. She sat on a bench watching squirrels dart across the path. Then she saw them. Leo came running first, his small legs pumping, a backpack bouncing on his shoulders. He skidded to a stop in front of her, breathless, grinning. "You came." "Of course I did," she said, standing to hug him. He smelled like soap and apple shampoo. He felt solid, real, alive. Elias followed more slowly, hands in his coat pockets. He looked different, less polished, more tired. There were new lines around his eyes. "Thanks for coming," he said. "Leo's been asking every day," he added, as if that explained everything. They walked together along the path, Leo chattering about school, his new dog, the Lego castle he'd built. Maya listened, smiling, but her eyes kept drifting to Elias. He watched his son like he was afraid he might vanish. After a while, Leo ran ahead to the swings. Elias slowed his pace. "I heard you've been volunteering at the community clinic." Maya stiffened. "Who told you?" "I have my ways," he said, not unkindly. "But I also saw your name on their volunteer log. I didn't ask for it, it just came up." She didn't know whether to believe him, but she let it go. "You're good with people," he said after a pause. "Not just brave, kind. I'm just doing what I can." He stopped walking, looked at her. "What if you could do more?" She frowned. "What do you mean?" He took a deep breath. "That clinic you're volunteering at? It's falling apart. No funding, no staff, barely any supplies. People are suffering because of it." "I know," she said quietly. "I want to fix it," he said, "not just patch it up. Build something real. A full community health center with doctors, nurses, mental health support, even dental care. Free for anyone who needs it." Maya's heart raced. "That's huge." "It is," he said, "but I can't do it alone. I don't know how to talk to the people who live there. I don't understand their lives. But you do," he turned to face her fully. "I want you to help me run it. Not as an employee, as a partner. You design the programs, hire the staff, make sure it actually helps the people who need it most." Maya stared at him. "You're serious?" "Dead serious." "But why me?" "Because you see people," he said simply. "Not problems. Not cases. People. And that's what this place needs." She looked toward the swings. Leo was pumping his legs, soaring higher, laughing as the wind whipped through his hair. "What's the catch?" she asked. "No catch," Elias said. "I'm not asking for your loyalty. I'm not asking you to be my friend. I'm just asking you to use your heart where it's needed most." She thought about Abuela, lying in a clean hospital bed because of his quiet generosity. She thought about the mother at the clinic yesterday, crying because she couldn't afford her child's asthma inhaler. She thought about herself years ago holding Abuela's hand through the night, wishing she knew how to help. This wasn't charity. This was purpose. "I'd need full control over the medical side," she said slowly. "No corporate interference. No branding your name all over it." He nodded. "It'll be your vision. I'll just fund it. And the name?" He smiled faintly. "You pick it." She looked at him for a long time. Then she said, "Okay," just like that. He didn't cheer. Didn't shake her hand. He just exhaled like a weight had lifted. "Thank you." Later, as they walked back, Leo grabbed Maya's hand. "Are you going to work with us now?" "Yeah," she said. "I guess I am." He squeezed her fingers. "Good, because I want you around." That night, Maya sat on her couch, textbooks open, but she couldn't focus. Her mind was full of plans. Exam rooms, waiting areas, a pediatric wing, maybe even a small pharmacy. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like she was just surviving. She felt like she was building something and somewhere in the city. A man who'd spent his life building companies was finally learning to build something that mattered, something that couldn't be bought. Only given, neither of them knew how hard it would be. The permits, the politics, the doubters who'd say, "Rich man's pet project." But they also didn't know how much good it would do. How many lives it would touch. All they knew was this: fire had brought them together, and now they were going to build something that could heal. The first time Maya saw the old building that would become the clinic, she almost walked away. It wasn't just run down, it looked like it had given up. The brick facade was crumbling, windows boarded up with warped plywood, the front steps sagging in the middle like they'd been holding their breath for too long. Weeds pushed through cracks in the sidewalk, and a faded sign from a long-gone laundromat still hung crookedly over the door. Elias stood beside her, hands in his coat pockets, watching her face. "I know it's not much to look at," he said quietly. "It's a wreck," Maya said, not unkindly. "But it's got good bones." He smiled faintly. "That's what the architect said." They'd been meeting weekly for the past 2 months, sometimes at coffee shops, sometimes over video calls, once even at the diner during her break. Slowly, carefully, they'd been sketching out a plan, not just for a clinic, but for a place where people wouldn't feel ashamed to walk through the door, where a single mom could get her blood pressure checked without worrying about the bill, where a teenager could talk to someone about anxiety without being judged, where elders could get their medications without choosing between that and groceries. But now, standing in front of the actual building, Maya felt a knot of doubt tighten in her stomach. This wasn't just paperwork or dreams anymore. This was real. And real things could fail. Over the next few weeks, the work began. Contractors showed up with trucks and tools. The old laundromat sign came down. The boards were ripped from the windows, letting in light for the first time in years. Maya spent every free moment there, after class, after her diner shifts, even on Sundays. She measured rooms, argued with plumbers about sink placements, picked out paint colors that felt warm, not sterile. Elias handled the money, the permits, the city approvals. But he never overruled her. When she insisted the waiting room have comfortable chairs instead of hard plastic ones, he nodded and said, "Order them." When she wanted a small play area for kids, he found a local artist to paint a mural of trees and animals on the wall. Still, there was tension beneath the surface. Maya kept her distance. She accepted his help but not his friendship. She called him Mr. Thorne in front of others, even though he'd asked her to use his first name. She didn't want anyone thinking she was getting special treatment, and she didn't want to owe him more than she already did. Then came the day everything almost fell apart. She was at the construction site, reviewing blueprints with the foreman, when her phone rang. It was the hospital. Her stomach dropped. She ran all the way to the bus stop, heart pounding, mind racing. Abuela had taken a bad fall. She was okay, no broken bones, but her blood pressure had spiked and the doctors wanted to keep her overnight for observation. Maya got there just as they were moving her to a new room. Abuela looked small in the hospital gown, her skin pale, her hands trembling. "I'm fine, Mija," she whispered, but her eyes were scared. Maya stayed all night, holding her hand, watching the monitors blink steadily. In the quiet hours before dawn, Abuela said softly, "You've been working so hard. Don't forget to breathe." "I'm trying," Maya whispered back. The next morning, exhausted, she went straight to the clinic site. She hadn't slept. Her eyes burned. She snapped at a worker for placing a sink in the wrong spot, then immediately apologized. She felt like a frayed wire, ready to spark. That afternoon, Elias showed up unexpectedly. He took one look at her and said, "When was the last time you ate?" "I don't have time," she said, brushing past him. He caught her arm gently. "Maya," she turned, ready to argue, and saw the look in his eyes, not pity, not frustration, just understanding. "You're running yourself into the ground," he said. "Your grandmother's sick. You're in school. You're managing this project. No one expects you to do it all alone." "I have to," she said, voice cracking. "If I don't, who will?" "You don't have to prove anything," he said quietly. "Not to me. Not to anyone." Something in her broke then. Not dramatically, just a quiet unraveling. Tears filled her eyes and she turned away quickly, wiping her face with the back of her hand. He didn't say anything, just stood there giving her space. After a moment, she took a shaky breath. I can't lose her. Not after everything." "I know," he said. And for the first time, she believed he really did. Later that week, something changed. Elias started showing up with coffee. Black for her, just how she liked it. He'd sit on a stack of drywall and ask about her classes. He never pushed. Never offered more help unless she asked. But he was there. One evening, as they walked out together after a long day, Leo came running up from the car holding a paper bag. "Dad said you forgot lunch again," he announced, handing it to Maya. Inside was a turkey sandwich, an apple, and a chocolate chip cookie. Maya looked at Elias, surprised. He shrugged. "You can't heal others if you're starving yourself." She ate the sandwich right there on the sidewalk, the late sun warm on her face. Leo sat beside her, swinging his legs, telling her about his new teacher. It wasn't friendship, not yet. But it was something real. Then came the inspection. The city health department came to review the nearly finished clinic. Maya had stayed up for 3 nights straight, making sure everything met code. Hand sanitizer stations every 10 feet. Emergency exits clearly marked exam rooms with proper ventilation. But during the walkthrough, the inspector frowned at the supply closet. "Where's your backup generator?" he asked. Maya's blood ran cold. We didn't budget for one. "It's required," he said flatly. "No generator, no license. You can't open." She felt the ground drop beneath her. A generator cost tens of thousands. They'd already spent every penny Elias had committed. She called him as soon as the inspector left. He listened in silence. Then he said, "I'll handle it." "No," she said quickly. You've done enough. Maya, he said, his voice firm but kind, this isn't about me doing enough. This is about people needing care. Let me fix this, she wanted to argue. But she thought of the diabetic patient who'd walked 5 miles to the old clinic because his insulin needed refrigeration. She thought of the elderly woman who'd fainted last winter when the power went out during a storm. Okay, she whispered. The generator arrived 2 days later. But that night, Maya couldn't sleep. She kept thinking, how long can I keep taking from him? When does it stop being gratitude and start being dependence? The answer came sooner than she expected. A local news station caught wind of the clinic. They wanted to do a feature. Billionaire funds new health center in underserved neighborhood. They asked for interviews. With Elias, with Maya, with community members, Maya agreed. But only if the focus was on the patients, not the money. The day of the interview, she arrived early to set up. As she was arranging pamphlets in the waiting area, she overheard 2 construction workers talking outside. Must be nice, one said, to have a rich guy hand you your dream on a silver platter. Yeah, the other laughed. She didn't build this, he did. She's just the face. The words hit Maya like a slap. She spent the rest of the day feeling like an imposter. During the interview, she stumbled over her words. When the reporter asked, how does it feel to have Mr. Thorne make your dream come true? She froze. It's not just my dream, she managed. It's for the neighborhood, but the damage was done. That night she lay awake, the worker's words echoing in her head. The next morning she called Elias. I can't do this, she said when he answered. Do what? Be the face of your project. People think I'm just using you, or that you're using me to look good. There was a long pause. Then he said, meet me at the park, please. She didn't want to, but she went. He was sitting on their usual bench, Leo playing nearby with a soccer ball. Elias looked tired but calm. I heard about the interview, he said, and I heard what those men said. She looked away. It doesn't matter. It does to me, he said. Because it's not true. He turned to face her. You think I built this clinic? I wrote checks. That's all. You're the one who stood in that broken-down building and saw hope. You're the one who stayed up nights planning how to fit a pediatric room and a counseling office in the same hallway. You're the one who argued with the city for wheelchair ramps before they even asked. This is your work, Maya, not mine. She swallowed hard. But without your money, without your heart, it would have been just another empty building with a fancy name. He interrupted gently. Money builds walls. You build trust. Leo ran over then, sweaty and grinning, and tugged on Maya's sleeve. Come play. She looked at Elias. He gave her a small nod. She stood and followed Leo to the field. As she kicked the ball back and forth with him, laughing as he tried to do a fancy spin move and tripped over his own feet, something inside her settled. Later, as they walked back, Elias said, I don't want your gratitude, Maya. I want your partnership. On equal ground, she finally met his eyes. Then stop calling it a gift. Call it what it is, a chance. And I'll earn it every single day, he smiled. Deal. From that day on, things shifted. Maya stopped apologizing for accepting help. She started speaking up in meetings, making decisions without checking with him first. She hired staff from the neighborhood, former patients, nursing students, retired doctors who wanted to give back. And Elias? He stepped back. He still funded everything, but he let her lead. He showed up only when invited, usually with Leo in tow, who now considered the clinic his second home. One afternoon, as they painted the final wall, a soft green Maya had chosen because it reminded her of Abuela's garden, Leo handed her a brush. Dad says you're the reason this place exists, he said solemnly. Maya knelt beside him. No, Leo, you are, he tilted his head. Because of the fire? Because your dad saw how much one person's kindness could change everything, she said. And he decided to pay it forward. Leo thought about that. Then he dipped his brush in paint and added a wobbly sun to the corner of the wall. Maya smiled. Good touch. That night, as she locked up the nearly finished clinic, she stood on the sidewalk and looked at it. Really looked. The new sign above the door read simply, Community Wellness Center. No names, no logos. Just an open door. She didn't feel like a hero. She didn't feel like someone's charity case. She felt like herself. And for the first time in a long time, That was enough. The morning of the grand opening dawned clear and cool, the kind of autumn day that smells like fallen leaves and fresh beginnings. Maya stood on the sidewalk in front of the clinic, hands shoved in the pockets of her new coat. The one she'd bought with her first stipend from nursing school. Not a gift, not a loan, just hers. She'd been up since 4, checking every room one last time. The exam tables were clean, the children's books neatly stacked, the coffee pot in the waiting area already brewing. People were starting to gather. Neighbors she'd known her whole life. Mrs. Ruiz from the corner apartment who'd raised 3 kids alone. Mr. Chen who ran the bodega and always slipped her an extra dumpling. Teenagers from the community center who'd helped paint the mural out back. They stood in small groups chatting, some holding paper cups of coffee, others clutching flyers they'd gotten in the mail. This wasn't just a clinic opening. It was a homecoming. Inside, the space hummed with quiet energy. Nurses in crisp scrubs organized charts. A social worker set up brochures on housing assistance and mental health resources. In the pediatric wing, a young mom sat with her toddler, who was already playing with the toy stethoscope Maya had insisted on buying. Then the Blacktown car pulled up. Maya's stomach fluttered, but she didn't look away. She'd come too far to be nervous now. The door opened and Leo jumped out first, wearing a little navy blazer and holding a pair of oversized scissors. He spotted Maya and waved wildly. Behind him, Elias stepped onto the curb. He wasn't in a suit today, just dark jeans and a sweater, his hair slightly messy from the wind. He looked less like a billionaire and more like a dad, a man who'd learned to listen. He walked over, stopping a few feet away. "You did it," he said, his voice low with awe. "We did it," Maya corrected gently. He smiled. "Fair enough." Leo tugged on her sleeve. "Are we cutting the ribbon now?" "I practiced." "In a few minutes," she said, ruffling his hair. As more guests arrived, city council members, local doctors, even a few reporters, Maya kept her focus on the people who mattered most, the ones who'd waited years for a place like this. She greeted each one by name, asked about their families, made sure they felt welcome. When it was time for the ribbon cutting, everyone gathered out front. A small stage had been set up with a microphone, but Maya had insisted there be no long speeches. Just a few words, then the doors would open for real. Elias stepped up first. He looked out at the crowd, then down at Leo, who stood beside him, bouncing on his toes. "A year ago," Elias began, his voice steady but soft. "My son was trapped in a burning car. I was helpless. I thought I'd lose everything." He paused, swallowed, but someone ran toward the fire when everyone else ran away. That person didn't ask for anything, didn't even give her name at first. She just saw a child in trouble, and acted. He turned to Maya. "Because of her courage, my son is here today, and because of her vision, this place exists. This isn't my gift to the neighborhood. It's hers. I just helped carry the bricks." The crowd clapped, not the polite kind, but the warm, heartfelt kind that comes from real understanding. Then Maya stepped up. She wasn't used to speaking in front of crowds. Her hands were sweaty, her heart racing. But she looked out at the faces she knew, the tired eyes of working parents, the hopeful smiles of elders, the curious stares of kids, and she found her voice. "I grew up 3 blocks from here," she said. "I've seen what happens when people don't have access to care. My grandmother got sick, and we had to choose between her medicine and the electric bill. I've seen neighbors skip meals so their kids could eat. I've watched good people suffer in silence because they were ashamed to ask for help." She took a breath. "This place isn't fancy, but it's open. No one will be turned away. No one will be judged. If you need help, you'll get it. That's the promise." She looked at Leo. "A long time ago, someone told me that heroes run into the fire, but I don't think that's true. I think heroes are the ones who stay afterward, who build something better from the ashes." She stepped down and Leo ran to the ribbon, scissors in hand. With Maya's help, he snipped the red ribbon in 2. The crowd cheered. Balloons rose into the sky, and the doors of the community wellness center swung wide open. Inside, the real work began. Over the next few hours, people streamed in, not just for tours, but for care. A woman got her blood sugar checked for the first time in years. A teenager spoke to a counselor about anxiety. An elderly man picked up his blood pressure medication without flinching at the price tag, because there wasn't one. Maya moved through it all like a quiet current. checking in, offering a hand, making sure everything ran smoothly. She wasn't the boss, not really. She was part of the team, just another person trying to help. Late in the afternoon, when the crowd had thinned and the sun slanted golden through the windows, Maya found a quiet moment in the small office they'd set aside for her. It wasn't fancy, just a desk, a bookshelf, a photo of Abuela on the wall, but it was hers. There was a soft knock on the door. Elias stood there, holding 2 paper cups of coffee. "Thought you could use this." She smiled and took one. "Thanks." He leaned against the door frame, not coming in. "She'd be proud," he said, nodding at Abuela's photo. "She is," Maya said. She came by this morning, sat in the waiting room for an hour, just watching people come and go. Said it felt like hope walking through the door. They stood in comfortable silence for a while, sipping coffee, listening to the muffled sounds of life from the hallway. Laughter, quiet conversations, the beep of a blood pressure monitor. Finally, Elias said, "You know, before that night on the highway, I thought success was about building something no one else could. Bigger offices, faster tech, more money. I thought that's what mattered." He looked at her. "You showed me I was wrong. Real success is building something that helps people stand taller, something that lasts." Maya met his gaze. "You didn't need me to tell you that. You just needed to remember." He smiled faintly. "Maybe." Down the hall, Leo's voice rang out. "Maya, there's a little girl here who's scared of shots. She says she'll only talk to you." Maya set down her coffee. "Duty calls." As she walked past him, Elias said quietly, "You didn't just save my son that night." She paused. "What do you mean?" "You saved me from myself," he said. "From thinking I had to do everything alone. From believing that kindness was weakness." She looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, "We all deserve a second chance. Even billionaires." He laughed, a real warm laugh she hadn't heard before. Later that evening, after the last patient had left and the lights were dimmed, Maya stood on,